guys, welcome to my channel. So today's video, I'm going to do another New Zealand video. I thought this series of videos for New Zealand would be useful for you guys if you ever wanted to come here on holiday or wanted to relocate here and haven't been here before. So this video is going to be things you should know before coming to New Zealand. So we'll get started. So if you guys haven't been to New Zealand before, it's broken down into the North and South Island, and New Zealand is basically in the Southern Hemisphere. So the capital of New Zealand is Wellington. I think a lot of people think it's Auckland, but it is actually Wellington. And that's where the kind of parliament is based as well, within Wellington. And to give you an idea of size compared to other countries like over in the US, UK, the population is 5 million people, and a third of those people are actually based in Auckland. So to give you a bit of an idea on context, if you do come here, it's something you need to consider. So whichever country you're coming from and going into New Zealand, you need to be mindful of their customs and quite strict biosecurity measures. So things like in New Zealand that you bring into the country that they are quite strict on are things like wood products. If you've been hiking in any kind of places overseas and you're bringing in like soiled clothing or soiled trainers or boots, you will usually have to get those cleaned. It's basically to restrict any kind of contaminants or anything coming into New Zealand because it's such a natural kind of beautiful landscapes and kind of flora and fauna. So they do really take quite extra measures. Even if you're bringing in, let's say, a bit of food that you've forgotten it's in your hand luggage, it's something to bear in mind, because even if you say you've not brought in any food and you forget that you've put an apple in your bag, they will pull you up on it, and there are fines and there's other things as well. So they are very strict. So I would be double checking what you're packing in your bags, what you've got on you, and if in doubt, always check and always go online. But certainly from my experience, it's consistently been the case. So if you are coming in from another country as well. In addition to that, depending on which country you're from, so I'm originally from the UK, when you come here, I could convert my UK driving licence to a New Zealand driving licence. And over here, you also drive on the left-hand side of the road. There are certain differences with the UK, so I did have to kind of read up on different kind of road rules. And certainly if you're used to driving on the right-hand side of the road, also bear that in mind. Compared to Australia, that we're kind of nearish to, it's about 3 hours away from Sydney, from Auckland, and there's no killer bugs or big spiders or killer animals that I'm aware of, compared to Australia, where you always hear about snakes, spiders, etc. Pretty much anything can kill you there. But certainly in New Zealand, it's really not the case. It's still a beautiful country, absolutely stunning scenery, but there's really not that many kind of critters and things that are particularly bitey and venomous. So if you did want to come here with your children or just on a holiday, that's also something to consider. Also as well, alcohol. So I personally don't drink, but if you wanted to get alcohol, you can get it from the supermarkets here. But if you wanted to get kind of hard liquor, from my understanding, you would have to go to a liquor store. I don't think you can get that in supermarkets. It's basically wines, etc. I think they have restrictive hours on when you can get it as well if you go in the supermarket. But I would say always bring ID. So I'm definitely of the right age to buy alcohol. And when I've bought it for friends, sometimes I have been pulled up on it, which is nuts, obviously. But always bring ID with you. And sometimes I've actually had my driving license refused and they wanted the passport. So again, just bear that in mind if you are buying stuff for kind of friends, family, for entertaining. It's something to consider. And also you will find the Wi-Fi can be quite patchy in parts. If you're in one of the major cities, it's not usually too bad, but if you go out into kind of the rural areas, you will definitely find quite a marked difference. So again, if you need the internet for work or things that you're doing, it's best to research where you want to visit or maybe relocate to see kind of what their speeds are like and whether it's fibre, etc. Things you may not know about New Zealand. So New Zealand is one of the countries where we first get to see sunrise in the world, which is kind of cool, just because we're so far down in the Southern Hemisphere. And also, if you've not been here, there is pretty much more sheep than people. So New Zealand lamb is quite a popular meat. It gets exported all over the world. But generally, because of the nature of only having 5 million people in the whole country, there is usually more sheep than people. I think it might even be double or something crazy. And also, depending on what country you have come from, in New Zealand, we generally don't tip. It's not something that you would need to add on in addition. I mean, it's obviously nice to do, but usually compared to other countries like the US, where tipping is very much heavily the case, it's not really something here. You wouldn't necessarily be tipping restaurants, places like that. So it's something to think about. It's always nice. I think if you've had great service, that's brilliant, but it's certainly not expected and kind of standard. But Kiwis as well, I've found, certainly coming from the UK, which is kind of weird, I still kind of find it a little bit weird compared to what I'm used to, is that I could go out into the supermarket or out into the city, walk around town, and you'll see Kiwis not wearing footwear or shoes, which, you know, summer, spring, autumn, winter, no matter what, they'll be walking around, they won't have shoes on. It's not like everyone does that, but you will see it and you'll be in the supermarket going, oh my God. It took me a while to kind of get used to. I thought it was a little bit unique and wasn't really expecting it, but it's quite normal here. So if you're out and about and you see someone who's just kind of walking around with no shoes, no socks, no nothing, and just bare feet, yeah, it's a Kiwi thing, I guess. Also as well, I mean, we don't really have clear seasons, I would say. It's not like it's a clear summer, clear winter, autumn, etc. But I would say when people do come here, they don't necessarily realise how much it actually rains. It rains a lot. In the winter, I wouldn't necessarily say it gets really, really cold unless you're in the South Island. If you're in the South Island and want to go around, check out, do any kind of hikes and skiing, like in Queenstown, you would need like snow chains for sure for like safety. So that's something also to kind of consider. But certainly in the North Island in the winter, I wouldn't say it gets really, really cold, but it rains a lot, like a lot. And this year in particular, it has rained a lot. We've had cyclones, we've had flooding. It's kind of gone nuts really, but certainly since I've been living in New Zealand, this is probably the rainiest of years I've witnessed. But yeah, be prepared, bring an umbrella, waterproofs. Even on the sunniest of days, in the morning you could get sunburn from being really hot and sunny, and in the afternoon, pretty much it could be like a monsoon kind of like rainstorm. So dress accordingly and just have backups really. Over in New Zealand as well, it's an English speaking country, and the Maori culture, they're the indigenous native people here, and they speak Maori. And you will find as well when you're going around New Zealand, signage will also be in English and in Maori. So you can get around and speak English, which is great. It's just something to consider. So on the TV, on adverts, road signs, you will have both. And it's just getting familiar with that really. But yeah, the Maori culture is a beautiful culture, really amazing customs. If you do get the chance to come to New Zealand, I'd thoroughly recommend maybe booking like a cultural experience, where they're doing kind of hackers and hungis, which is basically like a big kind of festive meal, which is pretty amazing. And it is quite unique. It's certainly an experience if you've never been here before, but the Maori people are the indigenous native people of New Zealand, but you can get by with speaking English, so which is pretty cool. If you're quite sporty, New Zealand is well known for the All Blacks rugby team, and very much they're known as well for doing their hackers during games as well. But yeah, rugby is a big, big thing here. Generally outdoors is a big thing. Throughout the whole year, any season, people are going out on their boats, doing any kind of activities at the beach, running, jogging, etc. But very much sporting kind of country. So whether it's rugby, football, cricket, etc. But rugby is, from my experience, is a very big thing over here. So if you're very sporty, I think that would be great for something to check out. I would say as well with New Zealand, always get travel insurance. If you're coming here on holiday and you want to do kind of high adrenaline pumping activities, whether it's bungee jumping, going over the harbour bridge in Auckland, jumping out of somewhere, anything like that, always get travel insurance because you never know. I think it's really important to have. With regards to importing and exporting things, you may not be aware, and it probably blows people's mind, but Amazon, which is obviously a mega setup in most countries, we don't have it in New Zealand. It's still not in New Zealand. And if you're really someone that uses Amazon a lot, likes to get stuff delivered promptly, you're going to be in a bit of a shock for New Zealand. We do not have Amazon. I think in the future, there's a plan to get Amazon over here, but the nearest one we've got is Australian Amazon. And I would say if you're buying something off Amazon from Australia, you will get stung quite badly with import duties and taxes, which sometimes can be more than the items you're actually purchasing. So if you are used to that in your country, whether it's the US, UK, etc., we don't have it. And I have no idea when we're going to be getting it, but it would be lovely and kind of convenient. Also as well, the properties. So we have like mainly wooden built properties. Because New Zealand isn't that kind of newer country compared to other countries like in Europe, I would say the housing is not the best quality. Again, do your research on stuff, but we have issues with damp, kind of insulation, ventilation in general, just the nature of how they build their properties. Again, it is my opinion. I mean, I'm not a builder, but just from the properties that I've lived in over the last 6 or 7 years, it has been consistently the case. If you do move here and you want to buy a property, if you're looking at anything, I would be getting any kind of reports checked out, foundations, etc., especially if it's a really old property in New Zealand terms. Err on the side of caution, definitely get independent kind of assessors and things to check it out, because it is very, very common, even in new builds. So again, if you're putting money into property, I don't know whether I'd put money into New Zealand property over other places around the world, again, in my opinion. Some things that Kiwis absolutely love. So when I say Kiwis, we refer to Kiwis as Kiwis, the locals of New Zealand. So I would be classed as a Kiwi and also a Brit. But also we have Kiwi birds, which is, they're very kind of, you hardly ever see them, they're very rare, nearly extinct. That's the kiwi. So we refer to Kiwis in general, and then you've got the kiwi fruit, so it can be a little bit confusing. But Kiwis, the people that live in New Zealand, they love meat pies. There's certain things they absolutely love. I mean, I can't complain, I'm kind of obsessed with certain foods as well. But meat pies is kind of a religion here. So are things like sweets that they have. So they have pineapple chunks, which is basically pineapple wrapped in chocolate. Isn't necessarily my cup of tea, but it's like a well-known snack here. As well as drinks like L&P, which is like a fizzy soda, and Milo, which is like a powder, like a malt kind of chocolatey powder that people have as a drink for children and adults. And then also the feijoa fruit, which I'd never heard of until I came to New Zealand. If I've got images, I'll put them on screen. But they grow on trees. I think they're kind of the size of plums, but a bit more oval and green. And they can be super expensive here, but most people have them growing in their gardens. From my experience, a lot of people love feijoa fruit, but the taste isn't quite for me. And then one big one, which anywhere I go, if I go to friends' houses, entertaining, one of the default things is having a kiwi dip. And this kiwi dip sounds kind of horrendous to me. I'm more of a sweet person than a savoury, but kiwi dip is basically like an onion powdered soup mixed in with like reduced cream, and put it all together, and that becomes the dip, and everyone calls it kiwi dip. I've not been to anyone's like social gathering without someone, if more than one person, having kiwi dip with like crudités and chips and stuff. But yeah, very much a New Zealand thing. And obviously New Zealand wine, if you're into wine, I've heard New Zealand wine is amazing. We have a lot of vineyards and wineries here, which if you're interested in that, it's a great areas to check out, especially in the South Island. But we do have a truffle season, like in Europe. So between around about June and August, for about 3 months, we can have truffles, and they're grown down in the South Island. And I love, love, love truffles. So since I've been living in New Zealand, when I first came over, even though I'd come here on holidays before, I did sometimes get lost in translation with certain phrases. And yeah, things like, a lot of Kiwis will say sweet as. Sweet as, very casual. It kind of means that's okay, that's cool, no problem. But yeah, everything's sweet as. So when I would say getting my flip-flops back in England, that would be jandals. And also if you've got like a freezer bag or like a cooler, if you're going on a picnic, they call it chili bins over here. And I remember once I was working and someone was saying, oh, can you get the chili bin? And I was just thinking chilies as in spices. And I was kind of like, I don't really know what that is. So there's certain things, they're just some examples, but certain phrases and certain items of clothing, how you refer to getting to places, can be quite different. So that's something to consider, and it can be quite funny at times as well. But there are various phrases that are quite different, but it makes it quite a laugh really. And certainly things where I say in the UK, like my cup of tea or bits and bobs. And if I'm peckish or Moorish, that very much can be a little bit lost in translation over here as well. So depending on which country you're coming from, it's just to consider different types of maybe slang or different kind of words for things. And also because there's Maori as well, and you'll see a lot of signs with Maori on websites, it'll be in Maori as well as English. Obviously there's Maori words for different things as well. If I've got any kind of phrases, I'll put them on screen for things like hello, or even just saying Auckland. You can say Auckland, but there's different Maori words you can use as well. So it's really nice to kind of get integrated if you are here, even just if you're on holiday, it's really nice. But I hope these tips and recommendations helped, especially if you're just coming on holiday, but certainly if you're relocating. It's useful to know, and also just doing any kind of prep in advance, whether it's to do with the housing, any kind of customs with things you want to bring into the country. But I hope it actually helped you and really gave you a bit more of an idea of if you ever come to New Zealand. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.